This is from Warren Buffett. While the businesses were reinvesting in more plants and new inventions came along, if you own gold, you would look into your safety deposit box and you'd have your 300 ounces of gold and you would look at it and you could fondle it. I mean, whatever you wanted to do with it, but it didn't produce anything. Okay, now, first of all, I don't know where the fondling came from. I don't know what kind of crisis Warren Buffett is going through. I like Warren Buffett. Don't get me wrong. He's made more money than all three of us combined ever will, and that's fine and good. But I don't think he understands gold.
Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics, and today we have a fun show. I have a couple guests on here, and we're going to dig into why Warren Buffett is so anti-gold, which really, aside even from his investing success, has always been odd to me because his father, Howard Buffett, was a staunch sound money advocate, talked quite a bit about gold and silver. So to dig in and perhaps separate fact from fiction, at least explain why he says some of the things he does, I have two great guests with me today. We have Hunter Reilly from StackSilverGetGold.com and David Moadel from Looking at the Markets. So to get started, how are you guys doing today?
Good, real good. Excited.
Yeah. And Hunter's taking a break from a round of golf to come and resolve the mysteries for us. So appreciate you guys joining me today. And perhaps just to get started, Hunter, why don't we start with you? What is your take on Warren Buffett when he says it's a barbarous relic? Recently in his, a couple months ago in one of their earnings reports or the shareholder newsletter rather, he was saying gold is no metal for American metal. So what say you to that, my friend?
My take, it's the same thing he says about Bitcoin. You know, he doesn't like Bitcoin either. And it's simply, it's a side. He's on the side of the dollar, government, things, the system as usual, you know. And if he wants that to continue working and to continue getting those gigantic returns for him, he's got to keep the current system going. So, you know, I think he's just part of the insiders. He got that sweetheart deal from with Goldman Sachs in that 2008 crisis. He knew everybody was getting bailed out, and you know that's just, he doesn't want anything else to happen to the current dollar. Gold does better, dollar does worse.
David?
Yeah, I've got a quote here. This is from Warren Buffett. While the businesses were reinvesting in more plants and new inventions came along, if you own gold, you would look into your safety deposit box and you'd have your 300 ounces of gold and you would look at it and you could fondle it. I mean, whatever you wanted to do with it, but it didn't produce anything. Okay, now, first of all, I don't know where the fondling came from. I don't know what kind of crisis Warren Buffett is going through. I like Warren Buffett. Don't get me wrong. He's made more money than all three of us combined ever will, and that's fine and good. But I don't think he understands gold. He's basically admitted that he doesn't understand Bitcoin. And one of Warren Buffett's principles is don't invest in something you don't understand. And so, you know, I don't necessarily agree. Yeah, it doesn't produce anything, granted, except income. It produces value, or at least it stores value when things go wrong in the markets and in the monetary system. Just like stocks and Bitcoin, gold and other precious metals are, at least in westernized nations, measured against the US dollar. And so if you believe the dollar will continue to deteriorate as it has for many years, especially since the gold window closed in 1971, if you believe that trend is going to continue, then gold, okay, sorry, Warren Buffett, you know, you don't necessarily get produce. You don't get to produce anything from it, but at least you have something that's been of value for 6,000 years and probably will continue to do so in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. And you had a great point in there that I think is worth repeating, in that, Warren Buffett's made more money than us in trading and investing, which, maybe we'll catch up one day with our gold positions. But keep in mind, a lot of these banks were oblivious to the mortgage crisis when it imploded. So I think it's still good for people to question Warren Buffett. Maybe he's right about some things, maybe not. Although what struck me as odd was that if Warren Buffett said, I want to have productive companies, I realize they're printing a lot of money, and I see why people are looking to gold, yet here we've had all this inflation and gold hasn't moved that much. Which actually isn't technically true, because if you look from at least 2000, gold's up 5-fold, Dow Jones up about 1.5 times. So also depends when you measure by. But it's like if he said, I get the role of gold, I see why it's money and that you can't print it and how things are being devalued. But he doesn't really touch on that. He just mentions that he's baffled, as if it's like Ben Bernanke in front of Congress saying, I just don't understand it, and it's like incomprehensible. So any thoughts on that?
I don't know if Hunter wants to go on that one first.
No.
But no, it's fine, because it reminds me of how so many portfolio managers will put 60% of their clients' wealth into stocks and then 40% into bonds. Well, bonds are yielding zero post-inflation. In other words, real rates are around zero right now. You got inflation at 2%, you got bonds yielding 2%. So they give you nothing. As Chris so aptly mentioned, gold has outperformed the stock market handily, multifold, since the beginning of this century and millennium. So why would you put 40% of your wealth into bonds that yield nothing when you could put it into a different safety mechanism? Because that's the only reason they put people's wealth into bonds, is because they're worried that the stock market will crash again, where they're concerned that what is now the oldest American business expansion in our history in America, they're worried that it might come to an end soon, which it certainly might. It is getting old. So why put that 40% into something that yields nothing when you can instead put it into something that does not rely on a promise from the government like bonds do? It is not a debt note. It is not something that's being dumped by nations and central banks around the world, but rather something that has history behind it, that is something you can hold in your hand, and is something that, like we've been saying all along, is a store of value. So, I don't have a problem with Warren Buffett's investing philosophy in terms of companies, but gold is not a company. He doesn't know how to value it. That's okay. I do. All right. And so I choose to own it. That's just me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when you mentioned 40%, I want to say I just saw a neat little comparison chart of Bernie Madoff returns next to Warren Buffett returns for the last 30 years or something like that. And Buffett just destroys Madoff by tens and tens of percentage points. So I guess if you're Buffett getting 40% returns on what he does per year, then maybe not investing in gold makes sense. But for everybody else, gold, and investing, in bonds or stocks or whatever else, they're not mutually exclusive. So you want to kind of vary your stuff up if you don't have the Madoff or the Buffett style of investment skill.
Yeah, it's a good point. And quick note, we have had Luis Fernando Mises join us in the bottom right there. Luis, I think your microphone is muted. So if you can perhaps find the option for that, we'd love to have you check in And that's Luis from Emancipated Human, also writes in Jeff Berwick's Dollar Vigilante newsletter. And Hunter, back to what you were saying, and David as well. Question I have for you is that, especially now where gold, maybe it's not on the bottom of a historical range yet, close to the cost of production, whereas the stock market, I mean, I haven't checked lately, but I know we're at new all-time highs. So remember a couple months ago, the NASDAQ was up 5 or 6-fold since the bottom of the crisis. So in terms of buying low and selling high, Hunter, we'll start with you on this one. I mean, the stock market, that's one of the things. It's already breaking record highs almost daily. So certainly when you look at the pricing of the two, I get the idea of owning productive assets that can produce an income. But what say you to really just the levels that both are trading at?
I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? If anything, you can use gold as a hedge. Value of gold is more objective, and then the dollar and the stock market is kind of more subjective to however much faith people have in paper or paper stock. So I think it's a no-brainer to just buy some gold and silver and hold it, just as long as you do, sell it when it goes up, and you don't hold it till you die, and then it ends up going in the estate sale, and a dealer buys it for half price.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends how you look at it. If you want to circle it back to Warren Buffett, his favorite holding time is forever. Can you do that with gold? Can you hold it forever? Maybe. Leor Gantz, who is one of my mentors, he owns 2 years worth of his family's necessities in terms of dollar amount in gold. Okay. So in other words, he has enough gold to cover, if there is a big crisis, 2 years worth of living expenses for himself and his family.
Right.
That may be something he holds forever, or at least for his lifetime. That, I'm sure that's what Buffett means by forever. Right. Although he may pass it on to his children, so it might be forever. It could conceivably be. So it depends on the reason you have it. Now, if your idea is, yes, Hunter, to get in and get out and buy the dips, that's great too. That could be income producing, even though, again, Warren Buffett says it's not producing anything, but it really is if you look at it that way. And who says it's either or? You can have some to buy the dips with, and then you could have some just to hold forever, so to speak. And, you can do both.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just making the point that estate sales, it's a good place to find some bargain silver and gold coins. So lots of people end up doing nothing with it, which is, I think, why it's got kind of a bad impression on some investors.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly the way everyone on Wall Street talks it down like you're a tinfoil hat wearing alien hunter if you mention gold or silver, which I don't think is an accident, especially as we hear the reports that central banks buying the most gold since 1971. And real quick, Luis, are you able to hear us down there?
Yes, absolutely. I can hear you. I just put it on mute because I'm driving and I don't want you guys to have to go through that, driving noise.
Okay, well, it's great to have you on here today. Thanks for joining in. And if you've caught any of what we've been saying, I'd love to hear your take.
Yes, I don't know if it's just a matter of semantics, because I don't think gold is an investment at all. I think gold is just insurance. And even then, when Warren Buffett says what he says, you really don't make a lot of money with gold. It's like, David was mentioning about his mentor. It's something that you use for like that emergency situation. And that's how I view it also. My mentor, Doug Casey, that's what he said too, that's certainly not an investment. And he's a gold bug too. So if we're talking about maximizing our dividends and maximizing our money-making abilities, gold is certainly not the way to do it, in my opinion. um, it's something that's been really useful. Like we have a friend here in the Libertarian Party. Whenever we need something, like we're gonna do an activity and we don't have enough funds, we go to him and we kind of like do a little begging, and he hands us a bag of silver coins, and then we sell them for dollars. And so they're always handy, you know. Like it's a magnificent thing to have. But there's like it's a store of value more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's a point a lot of folks raise, which I agree with, although perhaps with a little twist that it's like insurance policies. They have the actuaries break out all the numbers, all the probabilities, and then there's an expected value. So you could still call gold an insurance policy. I would say that the insurance rate for gold and silver is pretty darn cheap relative. It's as if fire insurance and the house is already on fire and someone's sitting there offering the policy for a couple of bucks. So I get what you're saying. And certainly I think room for both schools of thought. And perhaps I have a few notes here. I'd love to get some comments because, again, we've talked a little bit about Warren, but why it was really surprising to me, for folks who are familiar with his father, Howard, and again, not just someone who liked gold, but I mean, he was a Austrian economist, thinker. He was even a couple articles on Mises.org, and I'll read a few quotes here. Because Howard Buffett served 4 terms in the House of Representatives, fighting for a return to sound money and against federal independence in the economy. In 1948, the Commercial and Financial Chronicle ran an article Buffett wrote entitled "Human Freedom Rests on Gold Redeemable Money. It is among the most cogent and concise arguments against fiat money available." Howard also noted that one of the first moves by Lenin, Mussolini, and Hitler was to outlaw individual ownership of gold. So again, not someone who was just saying, you know, he likes gold because he thinks he can make a couple bucks, but certainly someone who seemed to get the bigger implications of it. So, Luis, how about you share any thoughts on that one?
Well, I think that's right, and I think, yeah, it's I would agree. I think that's pretty right on the money, no pun intended. I guess another thing that I guess I'm like putting it in timeline. I think right now where that would fall is like the blockchain technology. So, you know, when people say, well, where does the value come from? Like the blockchain itself is what has value. So I think where gold was in those days, right now we have Bitcoin and all of that stuff. So I think it's just I don't know how to necessarily explain it, but while he's right, I think that worked for that time. Right now, it's actually kind of like I think you guys have seen that video of Dice when he goes out to the public and he offers him a bag of a Hershey bar or like 2 ounces of gold or some shit like a bar. Yeah. And everybody goes for the stupid chocolate. Like
I keep hoping he comes to my house someday soon because I'll take the gold.
You know, I'm curious if I ask for the gold, he will give it to me. But regardless, you know, like I don't think that. Like back in the day, people were more, I guess, probably money smart, right? And then they gravitated towards that. So I think that like moving in the timeline, I think that probably I don't see gold being as viable as a money currency situation as or investment, you know, as what we could do with crypto, if that makes sense.
Yep. Wait till there's another bank run.
Can you say that again, Hunter?
Yeah, back in the day, you know, they like, well, I don't know what the day means, what Luis was referring to as the day, but in the 20s, they had bank runs, you know, pretty consistently. So it was fresher in people's memories about how a system can go crazy in a short amount of time. So I think people were more apt to open to gold and silver at that time, where now we've got kind of the Fed has been able to keep things together. Even in 2008, when they said the world was going to end for everybody was pretty much okay out of it. It was probably nothing like those bank runs in the 20s and the 30s that people had to deal with. So, people's memories don't worry, they've forgotten everything, and it's when you forget things that history tends to kind of repeat itself. So I don't know, I think you'd have to go to like a country like Venezuela or something like that to see how they deal with gold and silver and Bitcoin, to see how Americans would deal with it if something bad happened.
Yeah, which I think raises a good point. I know there's often some animosity between the gold and the crypto crowds. I personally think there's going to be room for both. As much as I have Dave Kranzler, who's always giggling at me because of my silver addiction. Although, as much as I love silver, one of the things that really led me to get into the cryptos as well was realizing if I want to buy, a pair of shoes on Amazon, do I shave off like 0.136 grams of silver? So the idea that we live in a digital world, I see room for both, also having gold and silver, and then the combination of the two. And really, as the Austrians talk about, that really the best thing that we can have is a competition for currencies rather than a dollar monopoly, which is able to accomplish so many things by force. But when you actually, people who want to use gold can use gold, or cryptos can use cryptos, rather than feel like we're forced to use an overvalued dollar. David, it looks like you had a comment on that one.
Yeah, it drives me crazy when I go to forums and I go to chat rooms and there's a competition between, you got your crypto camp and your precious metals camp. And I don't see why they have to, you could have healthy competition, but I don't see why they have to be mutually exclusive at all. They're both anti-fiat. They're both inflation resistant. There's only going to be so much gold in the world. I mean, we could try to mine for it and discover more of it, and there's also going to be a limit to 21 million Bitcoins ever, unless they start changing the rules, which I hope they don't. It's okay to like both of them. There doesn't have to be any animosity between them. I don't necessarily think of one as real and the other is not real. Yes, it's true. You can, there are people in the gold camp who say if you don't hold it, you don't own it, and that is kind of a dig against cryptocurrencies. But I believe that the cryptocurrency movement is from the same spirit, the same grassroots idea of, we don't want to own government debt notes anymore because we don't trust that. So I don't see why there has to be competition. It's okay to own both. Just be aware that cryptocurrencies are speculative in nature. They're going to be a lot more volatile. I mean, people who trade gold may think that a move from 1,300 to 1,400 is volatility. Well, don't tell that to the crypto people because that's nothing. Okay, so let's talk about Bitcoin.
Just $100. What are you talking about?
Yeah, really. I mean, let's talk about 3,200 to I should say 20,000 in Bitcoin to 3,200, back up to 13.5, and now down to a little bit under 10,000. Now it's around 10,000. So be aware that you can own both, but probably I would say a smaller position in the cryptos than the precious metals, simply due to its volatile nature.
Yep. And that makes a lot of sense. Luis, I know that was your original point. Did you want to touch on any of the responses there?
I love gold. I love it. I hold it. I carry it with me.
You drive around with some gold coins too, apparently.
Yeah, I always keep, like, after watching John Wick, I got kind of like, oh shit, I should like carry my gold coins too. Anyway, so I think there's just something about precious metals, when you hold them, like there's a beautiful feel to them. But aside from that, I think that the competition is wonderful. You know, so yes. Now, how likely is it that we're all going to be like in a John Wick environment where we all hold like, you know, bunches of these, or like the baby ones, because these are like, I don't know, $1,500, like the smallest ones. Whenever you go out to eat, what do you do? Like, is that, I just see it like it's beautiful. And you know, somebody said, I think it was Peter Schiff that said, the kings deal in gold, and something of the sort. So all that's nice and dandy. I just see like in such a fast moving environment, uh, um, dealing in okay. So I'll tell you a quick story. Like my dad growing up, and him and his friends, they really didn't deal in money. All these guys were like, you know, Rolex wearing old people buying and selling businesses, and they just gifted each other like boxes of wine, or like, I'm gonna treat you and your entire family to a week in Vegas or whatever shit. Like, so in that kind of environment where everybody's really wealthy, I could see gold working. I could see silver working, you know, like with people with money. But it's just hard for me to really even fathom like normal people. And I don't see us as normal people, right? But normal people dealing with precious metals, it just seems like it doesn't seem as easy, I suppose. Another thing that I would consider is like, you know, I mean, I've worked with the Federal Reserve twice, and they love cryptocurrency. Like I go there, do consulting gigs, I ask questions. The COO was there, and everybody likes crypto. You know, it's something that they actually love. And one of the wonderful things about Libra that I'm seeing happening is that the government hates it, and I think Libra is something that's going to bring a wedge that's going to allow, you know, a form of competing currencies, because like they're saying, no, you don't have the capability because the entire world's going to get in on it. How can you just, like, to me, it's like, shit, that's wonderful. If these guys can get away with it, that means that, you know, they're like, okay, philosophically, I may not agree with Libra, but that one thing means that it will be in the minds of normies, and then we could have like a way to connect into that competition of currency. And then, you know, I mean, Chris, you've sent me a silver round, and I'm, you know, super happy and appreciative, and like dealing like that. Does that make sense? I mean, it's just hard for me to see trading with precious metals in a normal day-to-day. Like, I mean, I'm at Walgreens, you know, it doesn't seem like they will take that. It will be easier for them to take crypto.
I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying there. I think maybe it was right before you hopped on, I was mentioning how if you want to buy something from Amazon, do you shave a fraction of your coin off? So to me, I've been especially interested in some of the gold and silver-backed cryptos that are being developed. Again, you know, different people view things differently, but whether you say we're using ounces of silver or silver dimes for before 1964 to buy a cup of coffee, or if we put that in the bank and you have some sort of debit card against that, I guess back to our original point, I think a lot of these things can be debated. Although, again, when you think of Warren Buffett, just the way he talks about it as if it's just the most foreign thing possible that he can't grasp, seems a little bit of a stretch for me to believe that he's being totally genuine on that. Again, I'm not trying to speak about someone's character, but it's baffling, especially when you mix in what his father said and, you know, the things that he did in his life. So anyway, with that said, perhaps we'll start wrapping up here, but just again, appreciate all three of you joining me today, and maybe you can just let folks know where they can find you and any of the exciting things you're working on. And David, you want to start there?
Sure. Thank you for that. And thank you for hosting this, Chris. This is really great. Yeah, my name is David Moadel, and you can find me on YouTube. I have over 500 videos, which are free to watch right now, about everything from gold, silver, bonds, stocks, cryptocurrencies, and more. David Moadel, just type it in the search box in YouTube, DavidMoadel.
And Hunter?
Yeah, David, 500 videos, that is insane. And what else is insane, Chris, is I bought the Bulletproof Diet book about 5 years ago with Bitcoin. And what is insane is how much money that is in Bitcoin today. But you can find my stuff. My book is Stack Silver, Get Gold. It's the #1 best-selling gold and silver book on Amazon. Or I've got an online course called Stack Silver, Get Gold, Buy Bitcoin. It teaches you how to buy gold, silver, Bitcoin. Stack Silver, Get Gold, Buy Bitcoin.com.
And you will have the links to that below for everyone watching at home. So thank you, Hunter and Mr. Luis Fernando Mises.
Yes, you know, I'm banned from Facebook again right now, so I guess I can connect there yet. But I'm on Instagram too, Luis Fernando Mises. I got banned from YouTube, so I went to Vimeo, restarting. So Luis Fernando Mises on Vimeo, or Emancipated Human, something like that. And my website, emancipatedhuman.com. You know, I just help people. I guess I'm turning more into like less political and more into self-growth, and that means like all sorts of things, you know. So just whatever I can do to help. Thank you for having me, and thank you. Nice to meet you, David and Hunter.
Yeah, it's great having all of you on here. And again, I think perhaps maybe the biggest takeaway, everyone's going to have their own opinion, although, you know, just because Warren Buffett or me or anybody says something, I think it's always good to question and see what else is out there. Connect the facts for yourselves, because remember, all these bankers missed the last collapse. So the folks who were looking and questioning things were able to see it. So if you found this helpful, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and we'll keep you posted as the action continues to unfold. With that said, thanks again for joining me, gentlemen, and we'll look forward to doing this again soon.